Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Beyond the Pain, Heart and Home Healing After Loss. I am so humbled by who I have here with me today. This woman has suffered, in my opinion, one of the greatest and hardest kinds of losses that you can face in life. And it's actually really ironic timing, to be honest, that I'm having her on the show now because of the recent events with Charlie Kirk's death. And we've been seeing a lot of Erica Kirk, his wife, going through the loss of her husband all over the media. And so I just thought the timing was crazy. And so the guest that I have on today she is a certified grief coach. She is a wife and she is a mother, but she is also a widow. So her name is Bethany Spencer, and I am so excited for you to hear from her today. Bethany, thank you so much for being on the show with me.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to dive in.
Yes, me too. So before we dive into like intricacies of grief and all that work that you and I could probably talk about for hours and hours, but before we dive in, I want to just give you the opportunity really quick just to share your story. I want everybody to know what your journey has looked like kind of leading up to this point with the loss you suffered and just what your journey has looked like.
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, I think so many of us can relate to waking up inside a story that you never would have written for yourself. So many of us are living lives and walking journeys where it's like, how did I end up here? This is not what I had planned for my life at all. And that happened to me about 5 years ago when my husband of 14 years, we had 5 children, 11 and under, just unexpectedly was diagnosed with cancer, and it came completely out of the blue. He was a super healthy and active 42-year-old. He was a third grade teacher and just the most special human being, incredible man. And he was diagnosed completely unexpectedly with this really, really rare sarcoma. And our world in a moment, it was like, I know you can probably relate to this. It's like all of a sudden there's a before and an after to your life that you didn't have before. And so it was just like, oh my gosh, everything just turned in a second. Our worlds were completely flipped upside down. And from his diagnosis to his death was 11, I say long and short months, because it felt like the blink of an eye as far as time goes. But as far as emotional time, it just was like, oh my gosh, it was so, so intense. And so I woke up a widow and a single mama to 5 children under 11. And I remember looking around my house going, this is not what I planned at all. Where do I go from here? But I really felt, I'm a person of faith, and I really, really felt, I can remember standing in the mortuary looking at my husband's body in his casket. And I remember standing there and hearing just in my spirit, you are not in that casket. Do not bury yourself with him. And I was like, oh my word. And I remember looking to the right hand, to my right hand side, and seeing my 5 babies watching me. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, I have to do this well. I have to grieve well. I have to rise well. I have to figure this out, and I need to do it well to honor my late husband, to honor myself, and to honor my family. And so for the last 5 years, we have been just, I say crawling through the tunnel, crawling through the tunnel of grief. I don't really look at it as like this pit of grief, but we're kind of just crawling through the tunnel, and we're just making it work, and we're finding our way and just becoming the best versions of ourselves that we can, even in the midst of unspeakable loss. And man, it's been a journey. And a few years ago, I just felt in my heart that, gosh, this is a new kind of calling on my life. I've walked it. I've been through it. I know the bottom of the bottom of the bottom. I know the end of the rope. I know what that feels like and how lonely and hopeless that can feel, truly. And so over the last few years, I've been really just stepping into that new space, into that calling of helping others grieve, and really educating them and empowering them to really grieve well, and to really not shove it under the rug, but face it head on, and use it for good.
I love that you just said that you are helping people grieve, because I think there's this um for grievers, there's this, this desire to want to like run away from the pain. And for non-grievers, I'll call that, people kind of looking into our story, kind of looking into our lives, like from the outside looking in, might not understand why we choose to grieve well. And that's because, and if you don't know, you don't know. And we as grievers can't blame you for not understanding what it feels like, what that heavy grief feels like. And that's okay. But I love that you just said that, because it's like, yes, like you can run away from it, or you can learn how to do it really well. And that's kind of the mission that I'm on too, is
Yeah.
trying to help people learn these. My grief coach always said, like, these are life skills that we need. And if you don't learn them, like, good luck almost, like
Yeah.
you have to learn them. And if you don't, it's going to be tough. And I love what you said about that the voice that you heard from God, or the statement that you heard from the voice of God when you were looking at your husband in his casket. Like, you are not in that casket. Like, don't
Right.
let your life be buried like that. Oh, whew, that gave me chills. And I my faith was rocked, and I want to talk about that, but I'll wait to get there later on. My faith was rocked, but I remember I had never really been someone who like audibly like heard the voice of God, and I never really got like visions or anything like that in my life. Not ones that were worth like, not ones that I felt deep down in my heart that I knew that it was like from God, if that makes
Right.
sense. And
Yeah,
so I
totally.
was never one to just say like, "Oh, I heard that God's voice," or "I saw this vision," like unless I really really knew. But my sister
Mm,
sees things, and she's not a flaky person. Like, if she
yeah,
says it, like it's coming from
it's
like a real
legit.
place.
Yeah.
And she gave me this picture after we had left the hospital, after my daughter was stillborn, of this vase, this like broken vase, like on the ground, right outside the room where I had delivered her. And the picture was Jesus, as we walked away from it, Jesus just sitting on the ground, like picking up like each individual piece. And for me, that was my, like, the statement that you heard from God. It was kind of probably in a way, your promise to yourself, like, okay, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do it well
Wow.
in honor of
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
husband. And that vision that my sister gave me was kind of my, like, you know what, I'm going to do this, because I know that I'm broken right now, but between me and God, we're going to pick up the pieces and we're going to rebuild something else. And that was like, me moving forward.
Yeah.
And so that was, I say beautiful. It's not a beautiful story. What you're doing with your husband, your
Yeah.
husband's loss is not beautiful. What you're doing
Mhm.
beyond your husband's loss is beautiful. And that is why I wanted to have you here today, because
Mm,
I just love your message.
thank you.
And I mentioned the timing of this with Charlie Kirk's death and his wife, and I want to just ask you about this really quick, because I know what it feels like when I hear about somebody else losing a child or who has lost a baby. Like, I know where my mind goes and how I respond to that mother. Um, so I'm very curious how you have responded to watching Erica go through all of this, because I mean, I want to let you talk, but this is very early on. She is in the earliest stages, and this is when she's gotten the most media coverage.
Yeah.
And you and I both know that early on in a loss, like you're still running on adrenaline, and
Yes.
being in the public eye like she is like I can only imagine the amount of adrenaline pumping through her veins. But I just want to ask you and let you talk for a minute. How did you respond? Like, how were you able to relate to Erica,
Yeah.
you know, through the TV, watching everybody mourn, memorialize, or not mourn and not memorialize her husband's death?
Yeah. I think no matter anyone's perspective, or where, where you land on the spectrum of your beliefs and opinions and all of that, I think we can all unite over watching someone suffer. And so I just think about how you're like, you're immediately there's an empathy that is activated in you when you see someone who is suffering in a similar way that you yourself have suffered or are still suffering. And I think I never want to speak for all widows, but I know for me personally, there is um, yeah, there's a grief that's reactivated, that's triggered when watching all of that because it's on display. It's very, very public. Um, Everyone wants to chat about it and everyone wants to talk about it. And so my heart is just with her and her family, but also for everyone else who is watching on the sidelines, feeling like, "Ooh, that brought up some things for me again." It's hard to watch, right? And so, I just want to add one thing in that we have permission to set boundaries, right? And
Yeah.
so, while we want to be informed and we want to empathize and enter in other people's suffering with them. There is wisdom and discernment and also setting boundaries for ourselves, especially if we feel certain things rising up when we're exposed to things that are just that we know about, things that we've walked through. Maybe not exactly the same, but close enough,
Absolutely. Yes, I love that you just said that. We have to give ourselves permission to
Yeah.
put these boundaries up because if we're a griever ourselves, if we're dealing with
Yeah.
loss and we're on any sort of healing journey like I don't know what it's called, but it's like where you have it's not it's like a fear or like something that you're working through, exposure therapy or whatever that is. It's like
Yes.
sometimes in grief, like that's not really
Yeah.
what we're going for,
Right.
like we're actually trying
Right.
to guard our hearts and protect our hearts
Right.
because especially when we're early on, we're like I said, living on adrenaline sometimes, possibly
Yeah.
living in fight or flight. We're trying to collect the pieces and move
Yeah.
forward, and we have to protect our
Right.
hearts. And
100%.
that's a really good point that you just brought up that I wasn't even anticipating you saying. So I appreciate that. And the craziest part is for people on the outside, are watching Erica go through this and she's handling it with such grace and she's so beautiful and she's so, she articulates very well but she's surrounded by thousands and thousands of people watching her go through this literally live on television. Um the ironic part about it is she probably has little to no actual people in her life who can really relate to what she's feeling deep down inside right now. And even though there are thousands and thousands of eyes on her,
Yeah.
empathizing, sympathizing, being there for her, posting about her, supporting her and her husband, there's probably very, very few, almost maybe even zero people directly in her life right now, unless she is seeking them out, that can really relate to
Yeah.
what she's going through, especially since it was such a tragic death. A loss is a loss. But on top of that, it's tragic and it's traumatizing and all of that as it was. And so what I want to ask next and kind of talk about is what advice do we give to people
Mm.
who are grieving and whether you're in the public eye or not, you
Yeah.
simply just feel totally alone in that
Oh,
grief.
that is like, oh, that's a hard one. It's so hard. It's hard for
It
even
is.
those of us who are, you know, years into our grieving journey. But one thing grief needs and deserves is a witness. Grief
Mm.
needs to be witnessed. I see this over and over as I coach grievers and widows in particular. It's like, gosh, just to be in a room or on a screen or across from someone who gets it, because there is a there's a dialect of loss that for those of us walking through deep loss, we feel like we are always in translation mode. At least that's how it's
Mm.
felt for me. I always have to translate, like, this is why it's showing up for me. This is why I'm triggered. This is why, we just feel like we are always in explanation and translation mode, trying to explain what it's like. And while that is perfectly okay, it doesn't always land in the way that we want. We always don't always get the response that we want, because so much is actually lost in the translation. Because until you've actually been to the place that I'm trying to describe to you, you won't understand it in its fullness, right? In its entirety. And so many of us feel so isolated and so alone. So the one thing I always encourage people to do when walking through loss is to try and find a witness, a trustworthy witness, whether that's one person, whether that's a grief coach or a therapist or someone in your community or from your church or whatever that looks like, whether it's a support group, whatever that looks like, try and find a witness who can see you and who truly can relate to what it is that you're walking through. Because there is a lot of relief that comes from just feeling like, oh, she got me. I didn't even have to explain it. I just walked in, I looked at her. Like, I know I have felt that even in the groups of widows that I coach, I'm the coach, and it still brings me relief as a widow myself, because it's like, gosh, just the proximity of somebody who gets it brings just a next level of relief and softening for us.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And having someone that completely understands you, who you don't have to, like you said, speak in translation.
Yeah.
You just you
Yeah.
can almost sometimes just look at them. Like even
Yes.
just a look is like
Yes.
enough
Just a look.
sometimes.
Yeah.
Just a look.
Yeah.
And that is so powerful because you feel understood. But not only that, like, yes, that is excellent advice. But the other thing that comes with that, with talking, like, I remember my first, I put off grief coaching. Somebody literally offered, a good family friend of mine offered to send me through
Oh,
counseling. And it was such a blessing. But, but at the time I was very like resistant to it.
yeah, of course.
And, and it's because I was like, what is anybody going to say to me that's going to make this hurt less or be less painful or make things better? Like, nothing that anybody can say is going to make this better. So I was very resistant. And I was also, I was dealing with postpartum.
Yeah.
It,
Wow.
and my body thought, well, my body knew it had a baby, but it
Yeah.
didn't know that the
Yeah.
baby was no longer here. So I was dealing with that. I was dealing with all of the, what do you call it? The physical, effects of that grief has on our bodies.
Right.
I was dealing with all of these things. And I remember telling myself, once I feel better physically,
Mhm.
then I'll go see a counselor. Little did I know that releasing was the first step to me feeling better.
Yeah.
And I can't remember who this was. I want to give them credit, but I can't remember who told me this. But she basically told me that even just talking about and releasing, telling your story and just releasing it out of your mouth, there's this insane energy shift from you. It literally
Yeah.
leaves your body.
Yes.
And I know that sounds a little like woo woo, like
No, it makes total
kind of
sense to
cuckoo,
me.
but when you've gone through this and you've done it, you understand it's like a burden. That's what counseling is. You go and you talk to someone, and it's like half of what you're doing there is you're just releasing. You stop suppressing and you release. And I remember my first counseling session, I talked the whole time, and all she said was, "Why don't you tell me what happened?" And I talked and I sobbed, and at the end of the session, I felt so much better, and she almost didn't say a word to me.
Yeah.
And it's because I just needed to shift that energy. I needed somebody to listen to me who understood, and I needed to shift the energy off of myself onto somebody that understood.
Yeah.
And I immediately felt better. I couldn't believe it. I was like, you didn't even say anything. How do I
Yeah.
feel better?
It's so good though. We call that, I like to call that in my coaching like an external storage. And it sounds
Mm,
like, oh, but we have all, just like you said, like she didn't even say like what, two sentences to you, three
yeah,
sentences
barely.
to you. Um, and just that witnessing. And I also want to say, like, your witness doesn't have to be someone always. I mean, it is nice if they've walked a similar path, but even just having somebody, to just sit there and be like, I hear everything. I'm not judging. This is a safe space. Just put it all out there. But that external storage is powerful. That's why we journal. That's why we go on a walk and we just talk to whatever. We
Yeah.
just say the words out
Whoever.
loud. That's why we have coaches and counselors, and that external storage, there is something really, really powerful about taking the thing that is inside us and putting it somewhere. It doesn't mean that we still don't have bits and pieces of it within us, but that regular unloading and unleashing, like you said, is really, really powerful. I mean, you can almost feel, at least for me, I can feel like a physical loosening where it's like, oh
Absolutely.
gosh, my chest isn't so tight. It's a little bit, you're just creating that, you're softening it and giving it just more space within you. Yeah.
Yeah. And I've witnessed someone very close to me, my husband, do the opposite of that. And
Mm,
it took a huge physical toll on him.
yes.
And I don't want to get into we don't have to get into the physical side because I
Right.
could, gosh, I mean, we spent so much time in the hospital. Like my husband, he had a pre-existing autoimmune disease, Crohn's and
Okay.
colitis.
Oh gosh.
But see, me, I was like, who can I talk to? Where
Yeah.
can I release this? How
Yeah.
can I get this out? That's how I started my social media platform. I was just talking to
Yeah.
my phone. I'm like, I need to tell somebody this. I need to get
Yes.
this off my chest. I need to shift. And I don't want to say thankfully, but um, miraculously, there were lots of women who were encouraged by what I was saying and related. And then I found my community of other lost moms and all of that. But anyways, my husband did the opposite, like he did suppress and he did do all of these things. And that landed us in the hospital for a very long time. He was very, very sick. And I don't say that to cause fear in anybody, but
Right.
that's just shows you how important it is. And we hired a health coach for him at the time. And he shared this story with us one time. And they've seen hundreds and hundreds, probably thousands of people suffer from, similar diseases to what my husband had. And he said this one client that they had, he was like their toughest case. They had done the whole, routine and schedule and all the supplements and all of the everything that you pay for them to teach you. They did it all and nothing was working until they encouraged him to start working on his internal emotional and mental work. And don't you know that is immediately when he started seeing physical healing. They were trying to treat all the physical symptoms
Yeah.
simply just from a physical standpoint. And as soon as they turned to his emotional and mental state and worked on that healing, that is when they started to see physical healing. And so that's just, kind of a side note, but that's just shows you how important
Yeah.
our mental and emotional, health is. It can have an effect on everything. And the way to do that is stop suppressing, I can't remember how you just worded it, but like a regular way to get those things out, whether it's
Yes.
journaling, talking to whoever you're talking to. And like you said, it doesn't have to be somebody who has walked in your shoes. If you can find those people, that's great.
Yeah.
But just someone who is willing to
Yeah.
sit,
Yeah.
willing to cry with you, willing to put themselves in the situation with you and just simply be with you. And that is so, so important. And that can be hard. And I know, kind of just shifting topics a little bit, like one of the biggest things that my husband and I struggled with was our faith.
Yeah.
And which is another reason why I love finding your account and what drew me to it, because there was just so much wisdom but so much realness too. And so you talk a lot about faith amidst grief. Like I wrote it down. Your tagline on your Instagram profile is literally, I write and speak about gospel hope amidst grief. Like
Yeah.
that's what drew me to your, I was like, oh, perfect. Like I need that. And so, for me, mine and my husband's relationship with God was absolutely rocked, like
Yeah.
from the ground up
Yep.
when we lost our daughter. I questioned everything I knew about God, and I still have lots and lots of
Yep.
unanswered questions.
Yep.
I questioned if he even existed, was he real? Did he love me? I felt betrayed. I felt backstabbed, like all of these things. And to this day, almost 3 years later, I am still rebuilding this relationship with God from the ground up, and I say that because my relationship looks almost nothing like it used to,
Yeah.
because I've
Yeah.
learned a lot about God since my loss. And so I just want to talk about this because I think a lot of people feel like, well, if they struggle with their relationship with God, then, when they lose someone, well, then they're not having enough faith, or we don't trust him enough, or we can't be Christian and doubt God when things like this happen. And I remember one time my husband was talking to someone trying to like release. He was actually
Yeah.
trying to
Yes.
like
Trying to have a
get things
witness.
off, and
Yes.
yes, trying to have a witness and talk through these things. And he was expressing his concerns about feeling like he didn't even believe in God anymore.
Yeah.
And this person's response literally to him was like, "Oh, well, you can't think like that." And my husband was like, "But I am thinking like that. So now what?" And he kind of left feeling like, "Well, what the heck?" And so I guess my question for you is because you speak about it so beautifully on your platform. Why is it okay to struggle and to doubt and to have questions towards God and about God, and not just rely on, cliches like God is good, because
Yeah.
people love giving us these cliches in our
Yeah.
darkest moments, and they're not always helpful. As a matter of fact, most of the time they're not helpful. So,
Right.
like, why is it okay to struggle and to doubt and to have these questions when we
Yeah.
lose someone?
Yeah. Oh gosh. I feel like I could go on forever about
I
this,
know.
but um gosh, I think well, a couple things. Grief is really weird and uncomfortable. It just is. And so many of us um are, especially when we haven't experienced a deep, guttural, life-altering loss that shakes every kind of foundation that we have. You're sharing about like, gosh, my faith, like, I don't even like, is there even a God? And I'm just like nodding in my spirit as you say that, because um that's okay. It's completely normal and completely natural because we're human. We're human. We're not tiny little mini gods who are supposed to have everything, put together. We experience really real things, and we have a really real reaction to those things, and we live in the world. And so we know we're going to go through things. I think one of one of the greatest things that I grieve is how the church and how the community grieves. Um, and I grieve their lack of grief, if that makes sense, because um, we live in a world where, especially in communities of faith in particular, I just have a real passion for that. Um, where we just slap scriptures on it. We make people feel like you've got to get yourself together before you walk back through those church doors. You got to have all your answers figured out. You got to have your little spiritual ducks in a row. You better sanitize that sorrow. Do not bring that in here. It's uncomfortable. We don't know what to do with it. And we have been taught that um, grief and pain and disappointment and all of the things that are not super shiny and fancy, all of those things are, you just must not be a good enough Christian. Your faith must not be strong enough. And it's like, I'm just really good at being human, actually. And it would be really helpful if I had a place of faith to go where somebody would just witness me, where someone would just sit with me and say, you know what? We serve a God who can hold everything. He can hold every doubt, every contradiction, every paradox, every question and doubt. And when we look at the Bible and we look at scripture, for those of us of faith, we see time and time and time again that like I'll just use Psalms for an example. Psalm is full of lament. Psalms, I mean, you cannot get through a Psalms without somebody pouring something out, and it's not positive. It's not shiny. It hasn't been tidied up.
Yeah.
They read almost, I don't know, read like mini panic attacks, to be honest. A lot of them, I mean, it's like, oh Lord, I mean, it's just like this guttural releasing of like, did you forget me? Have you left me all alone? What is your plan for me? What is going on? And I found so much comfort in the book of Psalms because God has never required perfection from us. He's never required us to just shove things under the rug. He just wants us to be honest with Him. And I think for those of us walking through loss, even though we experience seasons of questioning and doubt and really angst, it's uncomfortable. When you go through loss and grief, your faith can never be the same. I hear this all that, you're sharing like, my faith, it's so different than it once was.
So
How could it
different.
not be? Look at what your spirit and your brain and your body have lived through. Of course it's not the same. I think of like, a car that's like gone through the rugged mountains and potholes and this and that. And it's like, it doesn't come out on the other, it's still a car, but it does not come out on the other side the exact same way. And so I feel like in a lot of faith spaces, the pressure that has been put on us to put ourselves back together, where it's like, actually, no, I can't do this without God. I don't know all the things that I still think and believe, and I don't know what it looks like. But that's the beauty of God and the beauty of lament is that we can just turn towards Him and invite Him into it. And that raw honesty, it brings such a relief because it's like, oh, it's okay that I'm not okay. It's okay that I'm struggling. It's okay that it doesn't quite make sense to me like it did before. And I'm a firm believer in that. I think lament delights the heart of the Father. We even see this in Jesus before the cross. I mean, He was lamenting before He went to the cross. He was lamenting on the cross. And, if Jesus was doing it, I would think that we have permission to do it.
Yeah.
And so there's a freedom that comes from lament and being able to just really bring not edit it and not soften it, and just bring it to God and say, hey, this is really what it is. It's not pretty, but this is really what I have. It's like just being able to see the heart of the Father for us in our suffering, as opposed to what the church and what many of us have had so much church hurt from communities and sanctuaries and congregations and leaders that don't know how to help their people grieve well. They don't know how to do gospel hope and grief.
Yeah.
And so there really is a gap there, and it's not a critique. It's just a grieving of like, we've got to do better because the church is a hospital, right? I mean, that's literally, it's for those of us who are broken. And if we can't bring that to God and to church, where can we bring it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was all so beautifully said. A couple things there. One, there is a lack because learning how to move through your grief and heal through your grief, because it is all learned. If the church has not learned these skills,
That's it.
how are they expected to turn around and help the people who come in and go, I'm broken? They
Yeah.
haven't learned it. So
Yeah.
it's like you said, it's not a knock. It's not a critique. It's
No,
just, it's a simple fact that
it's an
if you haven't
observation.
learned it, it's an
Yeah.
observation. Exactly. And
Observation.
if it's not learned, how can it be taught? And that's why I said things like, when people kind of just go, well, God is good. And it's like, I actually
Yeah.
did an entire episode
Yeah.
called Stop
Thank you.
Saying God is Good,
Yes. Thank you.
because not that it's not true, but it's often used way out of context.
And it's not
And
helpful.
it's not helpful. It's
Not
not
helpful.
helpful. People only say it when things are really good. And when you only say it when things are really good, you're missing the good parts of God when things are really bad. And
That's
that's when God's goodness shows the most. And when you only say it when things are really bad, it's like you're kind of just saying that because you don't actually feel like coming up with some practical, helpful advice for me right now. So I'm just going to leave you with God is good. It's like, well, yeah, that's true, but like, that's so not helpful right now.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I felt so strongly about that, like earlier on in my journey. I was like, I have to do an entire episode about this. Actually, one of my most listened to
Oh, I
episodes.
guarantee it because there's so many of us out here who are like, stop slapping scripture and platitudes on the deepest pain of my life. And I really don't think, I mean, if we are really following the ways of Jesus, I really don't think that's how he would respond.
I agree very much.
You
And
know?
yeah, absolutely. And the second thing that I was going to say, I kind of hinted towards it, but when we don't, you know, God in the good parts of life, it's easy. Like we only learn half of who God is if all we do is get to know him when things are good. But when things are bad, and I mean bad, like dark, deep, brutal, when you suffer a profound loss, like a spouse or a child or anything in like that, that's where you experience the other half of God that you've never experienced before. And he's just as good as, in my opinion, if not better,
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
that's possible, in those deep
Yeah.
dark because you're so alone and you're so afraid and you're so broken that nobody seemingly can help you or comfort
Yeah.
you or rescue you. But it's like that's where God enters in and is all of those things that no other human being can ever be for us, even a spouse, even a child, a parent. Like you might have put, I would imagine in your case, you put a lot of your trust in your husband, your late husband. Even when that person leaves and is no longer on this earth, you're like, oh my God, like who did I know? I put a lot of my hopes and dreams in my firstborn daughter, who
Yeah.
then died. Now what? That's why I felt so betrayed, is
Yeah.
because I was like, I put way too much in a human. And then that's where the betrayal came from. And then I realized, like, oh, that's why we're not supposed to put all of our hope and trust and dreams and everything in humans, because they they die, they pass, And I know for me, even talking about getting pregnant again after our loss was so scary. So I can imagine what it was like for you to even start talking about, potentially remarrying after your husband had passed. Um, because I would imagine that the main struggle is, and I want to let you talk about this, is that you don't want people to think that you don't love the person that you lost anymore, or that this new person is taking their place in any way. We didn't want people to think that getting pregnant again meant that we had like moved on from our loss or moved on from our daughter. Like, these are all very common thoughts I think that grievers have in situations like ours. And so, one thing I know that you're very vocal about, and I love this on social media, is that you continue to hold space for your late husband every day of your life, even though you have since remarried, and that you can be in a new, healthy, thriving marriage and still hold space for the husband that you lost. And so from an outsider's perspective, that's probably a very hard concept to grasp.
Yes.
I
100%.
can maybe grasp it a little bit more because I'm pregnant right now,
Right.
and I've lost a child, so I can like sort of. But specifically when you're talking about a spouse, I would imagine people are thinking like, how does she do that? What does that look and feel like for her
Yeah.
current husband?
Yeah.
And so, because people say things to me like, well, at least you can have another baby. And maybe people would say, at least you can get married again. I don't know if anybody said that to you, but it's like, okay, it's like, yeah, that's true, but it's kind of irrelevant, because for me, if I had another baby, like that's not going to replace the baby that I lost, and same for you, just because you're remarried, that doesn't mean the love for your late husband just poof disappeared one day. So I just want to dive a little bit deeper into that. How do you hold space for your late husband while being married to your current husband? What does that look
Yeah.
like for you on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah. It's an interesting phenomenon. I think what's interesting about grieving and grief and massive loss like a child or a spouse is it puts you a little bit in the spotlight. And one thing about the spotlight is that everybody has an opinion. And everybody loves to think, well, if I was in that situation, I would not be doing this, or I would be handling it this way. And the truth is, there's absolutely no way. I just want to say this for anyone who's listening who feels like they have to answer to someone about their life choices amidst or in the aftermath of loss. No one can possibly understand your set of circumstances. I'm even thinking like widow to widow, right? Some widows are
Yeah.
completely like, I'm just going to mourn my husband for the rest of my life. I'm content being, maybe not content, but I'm not looking for something else. And others find themselves in the middle, and others are, it's just everything is so personal and individualized. So just want to make sure um, that I share that we all have permission to lose and grieve and move the way that we feel called to, and the way that feels right for ourselves and for our families. Um, but yes, we tend to think that human beings are replaceable. At least that's what I've found in my work, is that I've heard so many women say like, "Oh, well, people just think I'm replacing," and they just like you would never replace your parent who died, right? You will never be able to. You cannot replace a spouse. You cannot replace a child. And so, like for you, you're pregnant with this sweet baby, and is it a boy or a girl? Do you know?
A boy. Yep.
It's a little boy, right?
Hmm.
That would never replace your other baby, right?
Hmm.
It's so bizarre to think of that. Like it's just not
Right.
even in the realm of possibilities. And that carries over, at least in my personal experience, that's carried over as far as losing a spouse and then choosing to remarry. We can move forward without moving on. We will never move on from the people that we've lost. I haven't lost a parent yet, but I would imagine I'm very close to my to my parents. I will never move on from that loss. I will simply move forward with my life. And forward is not denial. Forward does not mean replacing. Forward does not mean, oh, that happened, that now I'm going to go do that. Forward is just forward. It's simply a direction. And so we can move forward while still honoring our loved ones that have simply gone home before we have. And so for me personally and our family, it really looks like a lot of both and it was really important to me that if I remarried, that I remarried a man who was committed to keeping my children's relationship with their father alive, and that he was someone who would honor him. And so my husband's name is Keith, and he does this. He's just got a gift with this. There's not a day that he does not mention my late husband to my children or to me. He is exceptional in that way. But he also knows how important it is to me, and he's walked his own. He has his own grief stories, and so he really understands it quite well. Um, but there's this thing that happens with the both and the and we tend to think that we can only hold one thing at a time, which is ironic because we're such a society that loves to multitask.
Yes.
But we're always like, add one more thing. Let's add one more thing to the plate. But when it comes to those kind of relationships, one human does not replace another human. And so just from that standpoint alone, it's entirely impossible to replace my late husband with my current husband. And if you are committed um, to keeping whoever you've lost, in my case, my late husband's memory alive, and committed to still telling stories and still honoring and still remembering and all of the things, you just carry that person with you, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that both and is so powerful. And I think it gives a lot of us permission too, where it's like, I can awake my imagination and my creativity again when it comes to designing my life in this season without, forgetting or rewrite. We're not rewriting anything. We're just adding to the story, right? And so this is just the next chapter. This isn't a replacement chapter. Like when you read in a book, like chapter 15 doesn't replace chapter 1. It's just another chapter. And so looking at it that way and holding loosely the fact that, hey, things change all the time, and this is okay for me. This is okay for me. And also knowing that not everybody is going to understand, not everybody is going to agree, and that is okay. They're entitled to their opinions just like we are, but we do have a responsibility to our own selves, whether those opinions are going to inform the choices that we make for ourselves, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Mm.
I love how you described, one chapter of the book not replacing another. That's so perfectly said. I love that analogy. We use the phrase both and all the time. Like my sister and I will text each other back and forth because she was there every step of the way with
She
me
knows.
through my loss. I mean, she was literally in the delivery room with me.
Yeah, she
um
knows.
and so we text that to each other all the time, like the both and the and, like, and that's a hard concept to grasp
It
until
is.
you choose to live it,
Yeah.
I don't like to say forced to live it because you really don't have to. We always have a choice. I'm a firm believer in that. But the both and the and that is that's one of the reasons that drew me to you and your pages and what you put out there, because there's a lot of grief pages out there. um and and I don't love them all. I
Hmm.
don't agree with them all, so I don't follow them all.
Yeah.
But the one of the things that drew me to you specifically was, this story. Um, I I don't like using the phrase "your story" because it's your real life. From
Yeah.
outsiders' perspective,
Yeah.
it's a story, but it's your
Right.
life.
That's
But
a good way to put it.
yes, like, so, but when people tell me like your story is beautiful, like I know what they're trying to say, and I do appreciate that. And I just want to remind everybody that someone's story is their real life. Like it's not a story to them. They're not reading through a book. Like this is their real life. But so I hate using that phrase because I know how it can feel sometimes, but for the sake of everyone else listening, your story of grief could have completely wrecked you, and I'm sure it did at first, I'm sure it wrecked you. And what drew me to you was that you were so determined to not let it keep you stuck in that pain. Like you said at the beginning, you mentioned what you had heard the voice of God saying, you're not in that casket. So don't let your life get buried with his. I love that. And so, you're from the outside. I'm not, making any judgments, but you're a put together successful person now. You've remarried and you're doing all these wonderful things for other people. And I know from having suffered like a very devastating loss, these things don't happen by chance. You don't just get from the the
Yeah.
the day that person
Yeah.
died to where you are today. You don't just magically recover from something like
Right.
this. You have to make a lot of really hard choices to get from the moment you lose to someone to where people like you and I are today. And when I say success, I'm not talking money. I'm not talking numbers on
Yeah.
social media. I mean
Yep. Yeah, I get it.
healthy,
Yeah.
thriving, mentally and emotionally stable people. We didn't,
Yes.
not
Yes.
suffering from a
Yeah.
spiral of depression, I guess
Yeah.
is what I'm referring to. I want to make that clear. Um, so what drew me to your message was, or to your page, was your message of hope and healing. And we're not just talking about grief and how it affects you, although those things are very, very important. You need to be educated on those things, but we're talking about how we can heal from it and
Yeah.
how we can learn from it, and how there is,
Hmm.
hope
Yeah.
beyond the pain. It's literally the name of my podcast,
Yeah.
because I just love that part of your message. And so I guess my final question for you, and you kind of mentioned it before, is where in your journey, or where in your story, again, I hate calling it a story, but did you decide that you were going to make that decision for yourself? And maybe it was the moment standing over your husband in his casket, like that you told yourself, I am not going to stay down forever.
Yeah.
I am going to find healing and hold on to hope. And so what part of your journey was that moment that you knew that you wanted more for yourself and you didn't want to just be stuck with this terrible pain forever and, well, this is
Yeah.
my life now, you know?
Yeah. So I love what you said because it really is a series of decisions. It really
Mm-hmm.
is. And
Mm.
I know for me, I have had to continually decide, even some days daily, hey, this feels so horrible. Like I would actually love to have this take me out, to be put out of my misery, right?
Yeah.
But it's that constant deciding. For me personally, it actually started the day that we got the call with my husband's diagnosis.
Mm.
Um, and it was in the midst of the pandemic, and so we received that news upstairs while our kids were playing downstairs with Legos, and it was just like this shock. It was just like, what? And like, that makes absolutely no sense. And I remember thinking to myself, this is either going to take you out or it's not. And you're going to have to choose. You are going to have to choose whether this diagnosis is a dead end or whether this diagnosis is just something that we're going to deal with, and we're just going to deal with it. And we're going to do it as well as we can. Some days better, some days better than others, right? Um, but yeah, that was the first point where I thought my life just might turn out differently than I anticipated. I might actually, because you hear the word cancer and it's like you immediately go to worst case scenario. And I
Of
remember in
course.
my head thinking, I might lose my husband. This man might die. He might actually, like, I hear what they're saying about treatment and I hear like, oh, we got to come in next Thursday. Like, I hear all of that. But I remember thinking in my head, my life just changed. Even if he survives this, our lives they will never be the same. And I remember feeling this conviction and this fight rise up in me where it was like, okay, I'm either going to harness this for victory, whatever that victory looks like, or if this is going to take me out. And it was like I was like at this crossroads, and so I made a decision then and there, and I had to keep making those decisions over and over and over. And then he passes away, and it's like I have to keep making the decision. And what I've learned about grief and loss is that it's not a one time. Like, you might be like, okay, overall, like, this was the moment where I decided, like, I'm not going to fall in the casket with him. Like, I'm going to
Yeah.
rise up. I'm going to stay on my 2 feet. I'm going to stay planted. But every single day there is moment after, I mean, even 5 years, there's moment after moment after moment where I have to decide, hey, I'm going to do this not for my past grieving self. I'm doing this for my future self. I'm doing this for the woman who is overcoming, who is still standing, who is taking one step forward, who is, creating movement in her life. And so it really is it feels like a day to day. And now, I am 4 to 5 years out, and it's like, oh, I can, I can maybe go a few days. Sometimes I go weeks without making a conscious decision, but it always it's so good at coming back, isn't it? It always comes up. It's always going to rear its head at some point. And so for me, it's like I have had to come to the terms of accepting this will never be solved. This is not a math equation. This will never be solved. This will never be fixed. This will never be out of my life. It might be in my life in different ways and shapes and forms as my life carries on, but I will never be without this grief and without this loss. And it may metabolize differently in different seasons, which I've now it's been time enough that I've gotten to witness that and see that and believe that in real time. But just the acceptance of that and knowing, hey, you know what, when I wake up tomorrow, I might be ambushed by grief, and I might be tempted to believe certain things about myself, about my life, about my family, about whatever it is, and I'm going to be tempted to believe those, and I get to choose again. It's like you're deciding for your future self how you will decide, right? And
Yeah.
so it's just, yeah, it's just a constant domino, like domino of decisions constantly,
Yeah.
which just speaks to the level of intentionality and how we do need to be equipped with tool. We can't do it on our own, right? There's no way we could do it on our own. We have to be equipped with people, with witnesses, with tools, in order to be in a position to make those decisions from a place that honors what we've lost, who we've lost, and also honors who we're becoming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. And I think the thing that I can relate to the most of what you just said is I remember very vividly early on telling myself I need to start making decisions that my future self is going to
Yes.
thank me for.
Yes.
And that's very, very hard to do. And in the most practical sense,
Yeah.
that looked like for me, we had a beautiful completed nursery. And, she in the hospital, she still got swaddled up and, and she had her hospital hat on. And so every day after we got home, my husband and I would go like smell her clothes, like that touched her. And I remember thinking like, when at some point down the road,
Yeah.
I'm not going to smell this every day for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
At some point down the road, I need to do what's best for my future self. And it sounds so like sounds so specific, but it's like these are the decisions we have to make when we lose someone who just falls right out of our life, like in the matter of a moment. And so and the best advice I ever got was to, or it's not really advice, but it was just a very profound statement that you can honor your loved one that you lost in your healing way more than you ever could
Mhm.
than just staying in your pain.
It's beautiful.
And
Yeah.
it was my battle cry. And I
Yeah.
just like that this little girl is so important to me. And even though I learned a lesson to that I shouldn't have put all of my hopes and dreams in her and my future in her life.
Yeah.
Um, but that but because I love her and because I want to honor her, I'm gonna do it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna grieve well and I'm gonna heal really well in honor of
Yeah.
her.
Yeah.
And that is on the days that I am like you said, they smack you in the face where the waves they come and you're like, oh my gosh, like am I gonna make it through today? Like
Yeah.
that is what gets me through. And that
Mm.
doesn't mean we don't have those moments. It doesn't mean we ignore the grief
Mhm.
because well we got to be strong. It means we feel it. We welcome those waves because we can't then because if we don't we suppress it, but we learn how to grieve well.
Yeah.
And you started the whole thing by saying that like learning to grieve well, and that's how we do it. That's how we honor our loved ones. We do
Mhm.
it in our healing, not in our pain.
Yeah.
And
So good.
yeah. So well, we are coming on that 1 hour mark, so I think it's time to maybe start wrapping things up. I have
Mhm.
so loved just it's been such a pleasure just getting to know you recently, and I feel like I get to know you a little bit more every time you post on social media. And so I'm just so thankful that you gave us just a real and raw look into your life today because I think that's so important for people to see. And so anyways, I'm just really grateful for your time. But one last thing before we part ways, I just want to give you an opportunity to just kind of share with everyone where they can find you, whether it's on social media or any other ways that they can connect with you if they want to reach out, anything that you want to put out there for them to know.
Oh, that's so special. This has been so fun. It's like we're just witnessing each other, right? Which is just
Totally.
an added layer of of relief, I know, for both of us.
Yes.
I'm on Facebook, but I'm mainly on Instagram. Instagram is just it's my jam. So I'm at bethany.ann.spencer on Instagram. I would love for you to come say hello to me. I always try to get in my DMs and respond to everybody personally, so that's always fun. But I also wanted to just share, I have, for those of you who are trying to learn how to lament and how to bring your grief before God in a way that honors what you've actually been through and what is happening within and around you without, you know, sugarcoating it and shoving it under the rug. I have a course that's coming out called Sorrow and Song, and that will be out within the week. Just teaching you the power of lament, how to lament biblically, and why God loves it when we bring Him our pain and our suffering. And then the other thing that you can sign up for, which is totally free, is I send out a hope note every Sunday morning at 6:06 a.m. For those of us grieving, we know that weekends are always extra hard, and Sundays seem to be extra hard just because it's a family day, and it's just can be a little triggering. And
Yeah.
so that hope note is full of encouragement and just tools and resources. And that goes out every Sunday morning. So you can go to my Instagram and sign up there. We would love to welcome you. And just so you can get some extra hope and some encouragement in your inbox every week.
Awesome. I will put all of that in the show notes too. So if you didn't have a chance to write that down, I'll write it all down there for you. So awesome. Well, thank you again so much, Bethany, for being here. And thank you to everybody listening. I hope you all enjoyed this episode just as much as I did. Make sure you subscribe to the channel to be alerted of new episodes just like this one. I can't wait to chat with all of you again really soon. Signing off for now, your hope dealer, Emmy Smaz.